It's a Chinese monster for high-speed construction. The machine lifts and concrete beam weighing thousands of tons and stretches itself from one bridge support to another for 40 meters. And the most important thing, it's set up so fast. China is building a bridge where trains will run directly over the sea at the speed of 350 kilometers per hour for the first time on the planet. And they also learned how to build skyscrapers in 19 days. Hospitals in 10, and residential buildings in just 1 day from scratch. They have laid high-speed railways more than the whole world combined. Stadiums, tunnels under the sea, 100-kilometer bridges. Stop, everything I've listed can be summed up in just 1 second. How did China from a poor village become the world's leading builder and investor? And why is this just the beginning? Do you know what unites the new headquarters of the African Union in Ethiopia, a seaport in Sri Lanka, and the parliament in Zimbabwe? They are all built or being built by the Chinese. To understand the real scale of their ambitions, let's look at the whole map. In which African countries do you think China's construction is happening? All of them. For example, Nigeria allocated $5 billion for a huge hydroelectric power station. The largest bridge in Africa in Mozambique is being built with Chinese money. In 2017, a Chinese contractor built a railway over 500 kilometers long in Kenya with a speed of 700 meters per day. Even in the Cape Verde Islands in the ocean, the Chinese built houses, a dam, and a stadium. And how much does China earn from construction in Africa? In 2003, it was $2.5 billion, which was already good. But now, this volume has grown 25 times. China earns almost $50 billion every year steadily. So why China? Why Africa? It's logical. There is a little money here, but many opportunities. This is where the Chinese hone their skills. How will they conquer the world without guns? So what are the main advantages of Chinese construction? First, they do it faster than anyone else. Second, cheaper than anyone else. And third, they are happy to build on credit. Now let's look at specific examples of what faster and cheaper means. There are drilling machines that are now used in China to build tunnels for high-speed railways and metros in harsh conditions. They took a straight path in Tibet inside the mountains at an altitude of several thousand meters, where there is simply not enough oxygen, or the longest tunnel under the sea is being dug with such technology. The work moves at the speed of 10 meters per day and cost only $10 million per kilometer. To compare with the United States, the same 1-kilometer tunnel would cost $50 million. And why on credit? I will explain with a specific example. In 2008, Sri Lanka ambitiously decided to invest in its own development and build a new deepwater port, but they had no money. Relations with the West were not great, and in the end, the port was kindly agreed to be built by the Chinese. Naturally, not for free, but with interest. But with the development of business in the port, things did not go well, and it turned out to be unprofitable. And then Sri Lanka had to pay more than $1 billion in credit. And as you remember, but the Chinese guys are kind and ready to forgive the debt, but on the condition that Sri Lanka will lease them the port for 90 years. Sri Lanka agrees and gives it to China. And in fact, China takes a small piece of someone else's country into its possession. In the late 1960s, the Soviet Union was developing housing and a metro at a rapid pace. Chinese builders came to consult, planning only to dig a subway in Beijing. However, they cut off everything good. At the time, China was nothing special, a planned economy, portraits of leaders, communist slogans. Meanwhile, South Korea and Japan were experiencing real economic booms. By 1980, 70% of the Soviet Union's population lived in cities, while in China, 200 million people lived in cities out of a population of 1 billion. The rest of the billion lived inefficiently, on less than $2 a day. China had an abundant labor force, and finding new oil for these people was cheap. In 1980, the new Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping visited Singapore and was shocked by the quality of life and development. He decided to experiment, and the fishing village of 30,000 people in Shenzhen turned into a Chinese Silicon Valley of 12 million people in 40 years. How did this happen? Deng Xiaoping created a free economic zone for foreign companies in Shenzhen, which China offered. Well, first, build and develop. Shenzhen will only develop on new foreign investments because we don't have money. We only have $1 billion hands. To attract these foreign investments, foreigners are exempt for duties and corporate taxes. That is, if there is no profit, you pay nothing. If there is profit, you can relax for another 5 years. Well, wait. There was still a bunch of additional economic discounts and laws, but that's not the point. Second, everything produced in Shenzhen will be exported to hard currency. And remember the story of the arrival of Chinese builders in Moscow to learn how to build a metro? Well, here's a good example from 2005. China does not have its own normal trains or high-speed roads. What should China do? It seems clear. Let's turn to proven foreigners. But no, not just buy, but transfer technology to ourselves. Because the quote from local leadership sounds like this: our development cannot be profitable only for foreign economies. Over 70 years, China invested more than $300 billion in the construction of high-speed railways. As I said, China essentially created 40,000 kilometers of high-speed trucks from scratch. Now this is more than the rest of the world combined. Plus, China will have a variety of high-speed comrades of its own production. For example, the Chinese RX 480 train, which reaches speed of up to 350 km per hour. It was developed by the Chinese, but in collaboration with German companies Siemens and Bombardier, as well as the Japanese company Kawasaki. However, it is exclusively manufactured in China. Despite concerns that investments in railways may not pay off, China's massive infrastructure spending has led to significant technological advancements. This has also resulted in a boom in skyscraper construction, with China building as many skyscrapers in the last 30 years as the entire United States did in the 20th century. Half of the world's tallest buildings and the top 50 fastest developing cities are now in China. While it is human nature to push boundaries and showcase feats of engineering, China has taken this to a new level, constructing a 57-story skyscraper in just 19 days, using steel frames assembled like Lego. They have even set their sight on building the tallest building in the world at 220 floors, which took only 90 days to complete once the foundation was prepared, a process that took 210 days. In principle, everyone agrees that now China has its own technologies and money that need to be applied somewhere. Poor countries need technology and infrastructure. It needs to be built, and China is ready to provide its speed, cheapness, and loans. But whoever risks getting involved in this can become the new Sri Lanka or Ecuador. A few years ago, the Chinese quickly built a hydroelectric power station in Ecuador. But after some time, dangerous cracks appeared, and peasants downstream constantly faced floods. Chinese expansion outside the country will only gain momentum because resources inside the country are already being squeezed. After all, 65% of the population lives in cities. That's why China is investing in technology and construction within the country. But at the same time, it has a negative impact on weaker countries outside of China. Be strong, invest in your future, and be careful. Also guys, do not forget to share your opinions in the comments. We will be very interested to read.